Yeah, guy. Yeah, friggin' guy. Yeah, guy. Welcome. It is Spit, and we're spitballing. We're yeah guying right at you here, and it's Wednesday, June 6th, 2021. Good morning, David. Holy crap! Did you literally look like you just rolled out of bed?
You always
Or
say that. You don't
no, no,
realize I
no,
don't.
no. This is like the epitome of David Scales' rat nest hair right here.
My hair is far from a rat's nest. It is as clean as ever. And the reality is, that's all I have to do. I just run my fingers through it. Even when I leave the house for the day, that's all that I do. I do not comb it, I do not wash it. And so right now you saw it pre-finger running and then you just saw me run it. And look at how much better does it look now?
Oh my
It's fixed.
god! What is your significant other? I know she's had to have bought into this whole thing, or we'd have washed hair by now.
She didn't have to buy into anything when she was initially attracted to me because of my beautiful lustrous hair. And so and that was the selling point. So when I told her I don't wash it, she was a little confused, but that's what hooked her in the first place. So how could she even argue? How could she argue with her own lust?
Will you be washing the baby's hair?
Yeah, I probably will.
Oh my god! What's the deal, guy? Come
I'm
on, guy.
committed.
Yeah, guy.
I'm committed to the cause, but not that heavily. Like not for other people. I don't promote that other people live my same lifestyle. I just tell you what works for me, and then you can make your own decision.
All right. So the baby won't be a swinger. That's good.
A swinger.
Hey, we got a big show for you here, and um, we should probably get right into it.
I think so.
All right. Well, first thing I want to mention is the electric acid surfboard test. Did I say that right?
You did.
Electric acid surfboard test. It's starring Mason Ho and Coco Ho. Tomorrow is the premiere of a 5-part series, and we're always looking forward to these features that Stab puts out. They're a lot of fun, premium features. I'm not sure if they're premium though. I don't think you have to be a subscriber to get it. I think it's for everybody. And what are your thoughts on this? I have a few. I thought I'd listen to what you have to say about it. Have you watched the trailer?
I've watched the trailer. I'm all in. I've always liked this series, and of course, we've had critical feedback about ways that I've always enjoyed them. There were still just things that it's like, well, if they just kind of adjusted this for the format, it might
Yeah.
be a little more effective. And they have, and not necessarily based on our feedback, but they've always kind of slightly improved it. I think this looks like the best iteration of it. I think the having two surfers is really interesting. I think that these are both very interesting surfers in and of themselves. We've advocated that Mason Ho would be a great test pilot for this series in the past. So I love that they got him. I think it was really smart to get his sister, Coco, to join as well. And they're surprisingly articulate in their own ways. Like Mason isn't he's not academic about his articulations about boards, but he effectively communicates what he's feeling, and he's wildly entertaining. And so I think he might actually be the ultimate test pilot for this sort of a thing.
Okay. What you've said is fascinating. It kind of falls right in line with my hypercriticism. And I agree with you, what you've said initially. We love this, and I do love this, and I'm looking forward to it. And for the sake of this show, or this little episode of this show, I want to bring some things up that I'm probably going to catch some flack from the listeners for, but that's okay. And you have only spoken about who the surfers are. Your initial thing is, these are the surfers. This is great. Two surfers. And you've said it's entertaining. And you know what it is? It's all of these things. And I'm concerned that the electric surfboard acid test is too much about the surfers and the entertainment quality, and not enough about the board builders and the boards themselves. And oh, by the way, I'm sure that's how they planned it. And that makes sense in many ways, as far as we want to be entertained, and why wouldn't you choose these two people? And I'm going to suggest to you that it should be more about the boards and about the board builders. And this is leaning in a different direction, and it always has. And look, Stab in the Dark has always been about the boards. When I watch Stab in the Dark, say with Nick or Jordy or whoever, you really get a sense that it's about the boards, and cool, they've grabbed somebody that's totally worthy, and we're excited that it's these ripping surfers, and it should be for those boards. But this feels more like it's about the surfers, and it's about the entertainment, and it's about, and for sure it's going to be a little bit about the boards. But let me ask you this. I'm personally not in favor of two people. And it doesn't matter who the two people are. I'm okay with just Coco Ho, and I'm okay with just Mason Ho, but I think two people, in a weird way, they've added a variable which might take away from this. So I think that it should just be one surfer. If it's about entertainment, I get it. It's two surfers. If it's about this fun, let's just frolic with a bunch of different boards and go out and blah, 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 But if it's really about the boards and the builders, let me throw some things at you. I know you're going to shoot this down, but that's okay. So for the sake of consistency, I'm proposing, this might make you vomit a little bit, I'm proposing a 3-year run of the same exact surfer for the electric surfboard acid test.
Why?
Maybe should I reach over there and slap you a little bit? Do you not hear what I'm saying?
I think, no,
Did you not hear what I'm saying? Because it needs to be about the surfboards and the surfboard builders.
I mean, I'm trying to, I understand that premise. I don't think that they've ever fallen short to deliver on that exact thing. Every single time they've done this, they do really detailed analysis of the boards itself, interviews with the shapers. The last time they did it, they actually did individual episodes with each shaper that came out after the entire thing. So there was kind of a follow-up series that did exactly what you're asking. So I think that
you don't think two surfers is going to muddle that effort.
No. And I think that two surfers is actually a much better approach than one surfer, because boards are so subjective, and to get only one surfer on the quiver, there could be a magic board that they have 3 bad sessions on in a row, and then they just poo-poo the board, and the board gets a bad rap because of it. Maybe the fourth session would have unlocked the magic in the board, or a different surfer riding that has an entirely different experience. And they actually did something similar with the Stab in the Dark series, where they did the All-Stars.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Jordy, Dane, and Mick. And it was fascinating hearing all 3 surfers give their insights on the exact same board. They all felt differently about it. And I found that to be beneficial.
Let me ask you this. You make valid points, and you may be correct here. And you know what? Again, let's sort of throw the overarching umbrella that we both love this thing, and I'm looking forward to it. And
don't back off your criticisms.
I'm not. I've got another one. But we're going to poke a little bit at this here for the sake of drumming up interest. It starts tomorrow, by the way, Thursday, June 10th, episode 1. So it's going to be a lot of fun. What about this? I would like it to be someone who rides this type of equipment a lot. And I'm going to suggest to you a couple of people. What about Torrin Martin, our very own Torrin Martin, which I've never met. But he's a neat essentials guy.
The internet's very own. I haven't seen a negative word said. Everybody.
At least you've met him. I've never met him.
I stayed at his mom's house.
Oh my God, you are all in. How about, I got a better one, I think. Andy Nieblis. I'd like to see one of these red hot longboarders be the guy. And I know he's not the name. And this is where my criticism comes in. Maybe I'm kind of over Alex Nose personally. Like, I'm not that he wouldn't be great, but Alex Nose does, to me, it's like, I feel like you're at a vaudeville show, or like he's putting on some sort of show or something. Like, I never feel like that's really who Alex Nost is. Like,
I think
you know
it
what I mean?
really is. I think it really is, but I've also seen him do airs on a shortboard. Whereas Andy Nieblis, I've only seen riding longboards in single fins. So I don't know that he
Yeah,
can do
but
it
I
on a
mean, all we've
short
seen is
twin fin.
Coco Hose riding a tri-fin that, you know, at Rocky Point or what, like, that's my point. Like,
It's a good
anyway,
point.
I would like to see a surfer that has all these boards naturally in their quiver. Like, you know, like if you look in my backyard, there's a bunch of, and there's a lot of guys like this that ride fishes, quads, no fin surfboards, longboards, both high performance, big loggy drag, you know, fin draggers, you know, all of this stuff. And there's so many guys out there that rip. It's all happening. Actually, I was watching the Mex Log Fest on Instagram. They did a live stream, or they've been putting up clips. It's been really good
Yeah.
and super good surfing. And these types of surfers, I think, would be better for the electric acid surfboard test than maybe what I consider to be, and I'm not saying that, I don't want to pigeonhole the Hove family, but they're more or less high performance Hawaiian 3-fin riders.
I don't know that that's, I think Mason is falling more into the other category. Mason's been riding, I mean, they're all Mayhem's boards, obviously, but you know, the round nose fish and twin fins and some other things. I don't think as many people have as diverse of quivers as you are talking about, because that's the thing with electric acid surfboard test is they're doing, they introduce holes, they introduce asymmetrical boards, they introduce all sorts of like a super wide range. And the surfers that you just named, none of them have that quiver,
How do
you
you
know?
know? How do you know that Andy Nieblis doesn't have a hull?
I've never seen him ride one. I mean, I don't know that he doesn't own one, but we don't see
Okay,
him
but
riding
that's
them.
just an example. There's, you know, like we could actually dig up a really good name for
So
this.
no,
A guy that's
you
well
would come up
known that
with
rides all
three.
sorts of equipment.
You would come up with three names,
Sure,
and then
sure.
they have to, and then Stab needs to consider a bunch of other factors.
Yeah.
Who's entertaining?
Okay,
Who can,
that's where. Wait,
no,
hold
but they
on
do.
right there, because that's okay. Like if this is for entertainment, I think they've done fine. Mason Ho and Coco Ho, they're going to be entertaining. Who cares about the boards and who cares about, like, let's just get two entertaining figures. And if we're getting entertaining figures, then they've killed it already. That's my point, is that it's not about the boards anymore.
Well, look, I'm not saying they need to pick their criteria is based 100% on entertainment. I'm saying there's a 5% entertainment in the quotient. There's maybe 10% of the thing needs to be articulation, somebody who can communicate about the surfboards. I would say 50% or maybe 80% needs to be surfing ability, like talent, you know? And so when you kind of when you run that matrix or that calculus, Mason Ho, I think, fits perfectly. He's got more talent than anybody else that you already named, I would argue. And then
There's no doubt about that.
And he's got more entertainment than anybody else. And then he's also ridden enough of variety of surfboards to kind of meet that other mark that you're asking for.
Again,
So
I'm being
think he's
hypercritical.
great.
I don't think the Hoes are a problem. I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm just trying to take this thing to, I'm always about the board builders and the boards themselves. And to me, that's the most important thing. That we excavate that we highlight that we lift those people up. Does Mason Ho really need any more clicks? Does he need any more? Like he's a surf star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, so that makes sense from a marketing standpoint. Like, yeah, let's get the most, you know, the most eyeballs we can get on our electric surfboard acid test. I'm just saying that from an objectivity standpoint, I think it would be cool to get somebody that has that is known as a multi-board rider, has a large quiver, and there's a lot of guys out there like that, and they might not be the name that we want, so that we can get a lot of clicks on our.
But do they surf as good as Mason, and do they communicate as effectively? You know, because those are key details.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Like how good did first of all, there's like 5 people that, you know, there's not very many people that surf as good as Mason. Like, what's wrong with the common man who absolutely rips doing this? Like, do you really want to see Mason Ho do an aerial on a hull? I don't.
He's not going to do an aerial on a hull.
Well, that's my point. Like, you don't need a guy that does aerials.
I don't need no, I know. I'm not asking for an aerial. I'm just saying I want the most talented surfer to ride the thing and put it through its paces and then communicate back to us. I also like your idea of the everyman, but that's a totally different concept. I think in terms of what they're trying to do, they're executing. The one
So you're
detail we
telling me
haven't
that,
seen yet
yeah, go ahead.
is whether or not they will shine enough of a light on each of the surfers, and based on their past, or I'm sorry, each of the shapers,
Yeah.
and based on their past performances with electric acid surfboard test and stab, they have. So they have a proven track record of doing that, and I
Yes,
think they would be doing that again in this one.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure that the board builders, and again, um, I'm all for this. I'm excited to watch
I am
Mason
too.
Kokoho go. I'm doing some I'm trying to get the masses as excited as David and I are about this. And so
Well,
I'm just poking a few holes. I'm just seeing, it's good for Stab. It's good for Ashton and for Sam and Michael and all the people over there.
it's
To
good for us as well. I mean, I really think this is quality, educational and insightful entertainment. And from what I have seen of, they only released a very short amount of footage,
Yeah.
but I was watching Instagram while they were down there.
Yeah.
Each of the surfers and then some of the photographers as well, some of the behind the scenes stuff, and watching Mason and Coco ride the variety of boards. They look like they're riding the boards appropriately. Like one of my big criticisms with Dane's version of this was when he got on the hull, he tried to rip the thing like it's a short board. And that's just not how that board's going to be ridden. And that's the most extreme example, but he was doing it on the other boards too. Basically, everything that he rode, he tried to rip it like it's a short board when the boards aren't designed to go vert and they're not designed to be. He was just trying to fit these tight turning radiuses, and the board wouldn't go. And he'd be like, oh, that board sucks. And so I thought like those boards kind of were done a disservice to. And I also think like Dane might have been able to learn something from those boards, if I dare say that. Whereas Mason, I felt like he was really finding trim on the boards. He'd get up and just kind of like settle into the board, and the board would go a certain way and he'd go with it that way. And he'd then take the high line or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I only got to see him ride a few of the boards, and I didn't even know whose boards they were. I think part of this is concealing the identity of the shaper, which is why you haven't seen a lot of limelight shined on those shapers yet. But I think they've set it up perfectly.
Really, perfectly. There's no room for improvement. It's
zero.
done.
It is
as good as it's going to get. They'll never.
I've never even seen it, and I give it an A+.
Fair enough. I'm looking forward to, and I got to admit, I mean, let me ask you this: if they were like, "Hey, the new electric surfboard acid test is coming out," and what do they call it? Electric acid surfboard test. East.
Electric acid
surfboard test is coming out, and it's starring Andy Nieblas. Would you be?
I'd be less excited. I'd be less excited.
Yeah.
But the reality is I am interested in Andy Nieblas, and I don't get to see him surf as often as I would like to. So yes, I would be excited for that, but less excited than I am to watch Mason.
Yeah. What about, look, there's no doubt that both Mason and frankly, Coco's almost more of a draw for me than Mason. What about, I mean, they've nailed it, right? Like it's hard to get better than Mason and Coco. Like I'm excited. This is going to be fun. But
we talked about this a year ago, and we kind of tried to outline who the best surfers would be for this. And I remember saying Mason Ho and Kelly Slater was who we landed on.
Yeah. Yeah, because mostly Kelly, because he's Kelly and he communicates so well, and Mason because what Mason does well is he communicates on the board. You know what I mean? Like his communication is done through his surfing almost, you know what I mean? Because I think he is very open-minded he understands, like he grew up with, I mean, frankly, Mason and Mason's family probably does have all of these boards in their garage.
I don't
think Kelly Slater has all these. If he does, he just looks at them. He doesn't wax them.
Well, I don't think Mason does. I don't think, again, these are kind of, these are outside the box and they're outside of tradition. And I think Kelly's much more open to all of this stuff. I mean, I remember Kelly Slater talking about asymmetrical surfboards, like, I don't know, 2010 or something at the US Open, when and talking about flat nose boards, that Stu Kennedy was riding and stuff. So I think Kelly's totally open to
who
it.
would be a guy that
Ryan Birch.
Birch is the guy. That's right. That's what we nailed last time. Birch is
Yeah.
the guy
Yeah.
that they need to nail down. The problem with that is that he's a surfboard builder. So it kind of goes against his.
It's kind of better.
Well, no, but I mean, from his viewpoint, he's like, I mean, it is actually a win, but I could see
It's
how
a
he'd be
win.
like, well, do I get to use my boards? But every time he could be like, well, I could make it better, and then throw it away and grab the next and go, yeah, it works here. But you know what I do? I do this. Just
That's
could
what
really
would make
kill
it better. I hear what you're saying, that he as a businessman might look at it as a conflict of interest, but it isn't. It's actually, it actually elevates him and
right.
gives him an opportunity to really educate
Yeah,
for
makes
his
him
own
the
brand and
authority,
advocate.
doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So
So
Birch,
Birch is the
but
best
Birch,
guy.
but is Birch as not even entertaining? Because I think Birch is entertaining. Is Birch as communicative?
As Mason, totally different way, probably, the thing about Mason, I think, is that you're going to get what we really want from this person, which is a filter that's not on, like the filter's been lifted off. Like Mason's just gonna go, this fucking thing, a piece of shit, whereas Ryan's kind enough, and not that Mason's not kind, but I think Ryan would be way more politically savvy about what he said,
which we don't want, to be honest.
True. That's
Give
true.
me, and I actually disagree with you. I think Mason's been around media long enough, and he's kind enough hearted to where he'll know exactly how to
walk the
say that he
line.
does. Yeah. Say he doesn't like something without being rude about it.
So who's the guy? So it's funny, when I was sort of writing my commentary, I kept thinking about Derek Hind, because he wrote those top 100s, or no, the WCT
Power
or at the time,
rankings.
the power rankings, the ASP top 44. And you knew every year they did it. And every year you look forward to it, because you knew every year Derek was going to go and tell it like he sees it, and very opinionated, but with basis for every opinion. And so everyone was like cringing and enjoying, and here comes Derek's thing. And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, wouldn't it be good if, and that's why I wrote, what about 3 years in a row of the same surfer, so that we could see how that surfer adapted to 3 different levels of boards, 3 different years of different boards coming through. And we know where he stands on this haul, and now he's getting this different, and so
Man, I was so bored, but I'm already bored thinking about that concept in my head. I'm bored.
But you don't know that. And so let me ask you this. Who's the Derek Hind of this? Like, who would be the guy that you're like, yes, every year I'm looking forward to that guy? And we don't really know, but what we have seen so far, who's the guy that fits the bill? And maybe you've mentioned him already. Maybe it's Kelly Slater.
Kelly Slater also has a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
In his ownership share of Slater Designs. So, I mean, honestly, that job isn't for them. That job's for you and I feel, like, if you're for the Derek Hind analogy.
You mean the job of every year being the one that does
of riding the surfboards, giving feedback on the surfboards, giving a critical analysis.
By the way, what about Derek Hind?
Yeah, that would be fascinating. God, that'd be fascinating.
Be maybe that's the call.
That would be Ashton, the ultimate call.
That's the ultimate, because he can still get it on, right? He's probably like 62 or something.
I told you I surfed with him in Florida for like 3 days in 2019, so a couple of years ago now. And obviously the waves weren't great. We were in New Smyrna Beach, but I mean, there were waves. We surfed, we got waves, but it wasn't, it wasn't like where you would want to put these types of boards through their paces. But he's only riding finless boards, and even still, he's only riding finless boards. He has plans to ride board, and I shouldn't say finless. He calls it friction free.
I am about to send Ashton a text right now. I'm so excited about the Derek Hind call. So there is a call.
It's a great call. I don't think Derek would do it.
I don't either. But let's think about who, like, there's probably another one out there that we're missing, that would be epic for this. We've nailed, last time we nailed Mason Ho. We've nailed Kelly. We think that would be great. We've nailed Derek Hind. We think that might be insanely good. Derek would be fascinating, even if the waves were crappy, because just what Derek would say would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time beating that one.
Yeah, that's a hard one. But what about Tom Carroll?
I'd be entertained by it, but I don't know if he's the best fit.
Yeah. I still come back to one of these red hot, sort of all around longboarder types that's on this Mexi Log Fest kind of Joel Tudor vibe. What about Joel?
You would know about Joel better than I would.
I think Joel would be entertaining.
Oh, this isn't about entertainment. If you're already thinking about entertainment.
But Joel would break it down. I mean, the thing about Derek and Joel is you're going to get a real historical perspective. I think they're going to put it into context of, I can see Joel just going, oh, this board, they did this back in 67, blah, blah, blah. I think that would be good. I think Joel might be I guarantee you this, we would tune in.
Exactly.
We would tune in.
Suddenly someone's thinking about the business.
Yes.
All right. I got a couple.
Also, okay, go ahead.
Well,
that's enough
kind
about
of,
that.
Yeah. Segueing off of it. I've been more excited about a couple of surf video edits. This is one of them, which I'm glad you brought it up, but also Lost Track Atlantic episode 2 just dropped, I think last night or yesterday.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, but all of the feedback, like I've not seen such glowing feedback on something before. Usually in the comments section on Stab, less on Stab nowadays. Stab for a couple of years had a lot of criticism in their feedbacks, but on Stab, Beach Grit, all of it, anything that is ever posted about the work that Torrin Martin and Ishka are doing, it's all positive. And I don't just mean that's a good turning point for like surf commentary, but I think that it's shows an acceptance of writing anything, which I think is a step forward for surfing, is these guys are writing alternative equipment. It's not just high performance shortboards. For a very long time in surfing, if you did anything other than high performance shortboard, you weren't quote unquote cool, or you didn't fit in with the cool kid group. It's like now the minority has transitioned into the majority. And the majority is we want to ride boards that are easier to surf, that compensate for our shortcomings. Let me ride a wider variety of waves and a wider variety of conditions and actually help me get better at surfing. And I think that, and Torrin's a perfect example of somebody who's, he could ride a high performance shortboard if he wanted to at an elite level. He's that talented, but he's choosing to ride a board that actually services our surfing a lot better. And he's doing it beautifully, and he's doing it in like world-class waves.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be fun to watch. I agree. Part of it, I think, is that there's so much truth and sincerity that flows out of those.
Yeah.
The filmmaker himself. They're shorter edits, right? They're probably like 15 minutes, which is helpful.
45. The last one was
really?
45. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Because I was going to say, me personally, when I see those overly glowing, beautiful cinematography, like, cinematic, thoughtful shots, it gets a little old after a while. Like, I'd like it to be cut to, and they do that. I mean,
sit on the sofa and watch it. I mean, I agree with you. If I'm thinking, I'm just going to watch a surf edit in between doing these two other tasks, or while I'm eating lunch, then I do need it to be snappy and I need it to hold my attention. But for this, it is cinematic, and it's best viewed the way that old surf videos were. Go watch it in a group. Go to a screening.
You're viewing with wine, not with a bong.
Sit on the sofa, put it on the big screen, and let it envelop you, I think is the best way to do it. And really, because it's honestly, part of it is just, it's a travel piece, it's a mission, and you really want to incorporate that into the storyline, because that was the storyline.
Yeah.
Speaking of traveling in boards, though, I got this listener email that I think is actually pretty fascinating, and I would love to hear your feedback, Scott. It says, "Hey, Scott and David, listening to you guys talk about Liberia, and David's comments about sending boards to the ex-child soldiers. And it really got me thinking. I used to take extra boards with me on my travels through Indonesia in the 90s and the 2000s. I thought it was the least I could do to repay the locals for my use and enjoyment of their villages and surf breaks. Since then, however, through various conversations with local people at various places, I've come to realize that what I thought was an innocent attempt at gratitude was actually being seen sometimes as a negative gesture by the kids' parents. On one occasion in Sumbawa, I was actually asked very politely to take my boards with me by a group of parents. They told me that the local kids that got into surfing started ditching school to surf, hang out with traveling surfers, and instead of helping their families at home or moving on to careers, they became social outcasts, something that Western surfing is often romanticized and something that doesn't really amount to much in emerging economies. Sharing the quote aloha spirit with people in poorer countries and bestowing upon them the quote gift of surfing also reeks a bit of a sort of white savior behavior that once brought things like alcohol, McDonald's, to countries that would likely have fared better without them. Is it possible that we, in gifting our boards or branded clothing, and our lax cultural standards will simply be indoctrinating these Liberian ex-child soldiers into a new, albeit far less sinister, but yet wholly not wholly positive and often destructive affiliation?
Yeah. Hegemony. Look it up. Hegemony.
Okay, give me 5 minutes.
It's basically when our culture overtakes their culture. And this is an interesting email, and I think there's a lot of validity to it. But it's also a case by case situation. You just can't put a blanket over it and go, all Western culture is not allowed,
Yep.
because who's to say that that surfing couldn't save the life of one of these Liberian child soldiers, like give him the same liberation and peace and at least a moment of serenity in a chaotic world that he lives, every time he enters the ocean. But, and in Liberia, I mean, I think the situation's so dire and I don't know, but it's different in Sumbawa or wherever he said, right? Where they have, a community and an infrastructure and hierarchies and ideals and cultural and community norms, which are set in, and things are smooth and it's not like chaos with kids with guns running around shooting each other. It's like, this is the way that Indonesian culture has been for a long time. And so for you to show up with a bong and a Playboy and leave it behind with your surfboard is lame, right? But in Liberia, we got a different situation, we think, where it's like very dire. And so any
Stimulant.
or sense of an opportunity to have some serenity or some outward expression or something that gets you out of the chaos is probably a good thing. So each situation is different, right? But it was certainly, Nias is a great example of surfers going to Nias and kind of ruining it for a little while, and all of a sudden you've got brothels popping up and surfers showing up with bags of weed and coke and just leaving, just being filthy 22-year-old surfers, and
Yeah, I think you're entirely right that it is case by case, and there's also there's a responsibility on the part of the parents in this example too. Like dropping off a surfboard isn't inherently bad. Dropping off McDonald's or I don't know, something else, I think actually is inherently bad. Like that actually doesn't have any nutritional value, whatever. But the surfboard itself, it's like, look, if that stimulant comes into the community and your kid starts ditching school, maybe you need to have a heart to heart with your kid about that and create some more structured boundaries. And there's an opportunity for growth there. Now there's an opportunity for the community to create new levels of kind of intimacy and communication and relationships with their kids and have access to this new stimulant from the outside world that could open up new windows and doors for your community. And so I think that yeah, it's case by case, but yeah, you don't, if your community is isolated and constantly being overrun by tourists, and all of these tourists are dumping all of these things, then it probably is hard for the community to kind of keep up with that pace. And they obviously had a polite this is a good way for them to handle it, is have a polite conversation with our listener. Filthy the Bear is our listener. Having a polite conversation with him and just saying, hey, like, we've had enough, back off.
Yeah.
That's a totally reasonable way to handle it or manage it.
Yeah.
But I think there is also opportunities to incorporate these new stimulants into your community and grow from it. Is that a guitar pick?
It is. Have I mentioned? So I'm just going to read real quick.
We got ISA news too. We got to cover.
Yeah, I know. So hegemony is the predominance, specifically headship or control exercised by one state over another or others, as through conquest, originally applied to such a relation often existing among the states of ancient Greece. It's more or less kind of like demanding that your culture overtake another's culture.
Look, I think Filthy the Bear makes a good point in that you want to be sensitive to that white savior complex. Exactly. When you're traveling.
The other side of that is, and I often heard Australians say this, like, don't leave your boards because you're going to turn this village into a bunch of surfers and we don't want it to be crowded. And I've heard that. I've heard that's like the full surfers are the worst mentality.
Totally.
Hey, ISA, right?
ISA game's finished.
Can I chime in my opinion here real quick?
I would love to hear it.
American Wave Machine just opened a nice looking wave pool in Japan. And what if I told you that during the Olympics, it was going to be 3 to 4 feet all day, every day for the competition? I think you'd be ecstatic. Now, I'm of the opinion, and this is just my opinion, but the reason that the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, the Japan Olympic Committee, the ISA want the ocean surfing instead of a wave pool isn't necessarily the ocean. It's because organizers, they want a festival down at that beach for 2 weeks with yoga and acai bowls and healthy living and of course surfing and recycling initiatives and booths and live music. They want a full vibe down there. They wanted a surf lifestyle orgy on the beach. And oh, by the way, if there are waves during the competition, hey, that'd be great too. But really they want a groovy bitchin' festival atmosphere. So the IOC officials can get a feel for the beach lifestyle and have a few beers and see the competition and listen to some live music. And then all of them in unison give a robust thumbs up for surfing in the Olympics in 2024 and 2028. But we all know that none of that is going to happen. So why not have a contingency plan for using the wave pool if in fact the surf peters out? That's all I'm saying. Provide a contingency plan for the only people that are going to be there that matter, and that's the competitors.
Why couldn't they do the festival atmosphere at the wave pool itself and just solve everything?
Well, they can't do any of this because of COVID.
Okay.
I'm saying if there wasn't COVID, the reasoning behind them doing this thing at the beach had like 20% to do with the waves and 80% to do with let's give surfing a really good look for its first iteration.
That's my point though. If the festival is the festival can exist at the wave pool too. Like they could put the festival anywhere in theory.
Right.
So I don't think that's the argument for why they wanted to do it at the beach.
I do. I think it is.
I think the argument was there wasn't a wave pool in place and we weren't sure that it would be there in time for the Olympics, right? So they had to make a plan and the beach was always going to be there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, look, it's weird to hear you advocating for a wave pool competition.
Well, I'm just saying as a contingency to the surf being crappy.
Yeah.
Plan B.
Yeah. I have a hard time advocating for a wave pool competition, period, full stop. Okay. And I agree with what you're saying. Like, yeah, if the options are 1 to 2 foot crappy beach break or that wave pool, I guess I would have to pick the wave pool. But it's unfortunate that we're with the Olympics. So with the WSL, they can obviously pick any spot in the world in theory. There's limitations, but they can pick where they want the tour to run. That's going to be the limitation with the Olympics moving forward, is if you have to run the surf competition at the location of the Olympics, like what if it's in London? What if it's in, I don't know, there's a million bad examples. There's more bad examples than there are good when it comes to surfing. So that could be a problem moving forward.
I'll tell you what, though, it's going to be insane is the 2024 Olympics at Chopu in July. Holy
I know.
mackerel.
Yeah.
It's going to be so great.
So that's the Olympics in France run the event in French Polynesia. That's a perfect solution.
Yeah. So even extending that, if the Olympics are in the United States of America, why not run the July Olympics? Where is it really, really good in the United States in July? Lowers, I guess. I'm thinking Hawaii. I keep thinking, where in Hawaii is it really, really? That's too spotty. You can't depend on that as much as you can depend on lowers.
Yeah, lowers would probably be the call. Well, the ISA games itself, let's cover that for a split second. So Sally Fitzgibbons and Joanne Daru won the event. Interestingly, despite winning the event, Joanne Daru does not get an entry into the Olympics because he surfs for France, and those two spots were already sewn up by Michel Perez and Jeremy Flores. I can read the list of the people who qualified through this event, but it's a little bit tedious. Did you see anybody on that list that you felt could be
No.
the workhorse kind of guy? Like I was talking about Rezvin last week, surfing for Israel, and he's the janitor who could actually upend the whole thing and outsurf some of the CT pros. He didn't qualify, but is there anybody on that list that you felt could be that story?
Well, I mean, frankly, if it's 1 to 2 foot onshore and there aren't ramps, if it's literally 3 to the beach grinding, Joanne Daru could win the thing.
Well, he's not in it.
Right. Jeremy Flores, no. By the way, I think Jeremy Flores and Joanne Daru are grandfathers. They are old. Those are some old surfers I bet they're the two oldest guys. I know Joanne Daru's not in it, but Joanne Daru's pretty old. I bet he's over 30.
Yeah, I'd say he's over 30. You know who I think could win this event and be that story, that Cinderella story? Team Peru.
Who's their guy?
You're not going to know the guys' names, but I've been watching these guys surf since they were kids, kind of surfing through the QS level, trying to get on the CT. And then I've seen them surfing locally here in Huntington Beach recently, even I think probably in preparation for the ISA games. Luca Macinas is the regular footer. And then Miguel Tudela. Remember Miguel Tudela? Didn't he surf the pipe event just recently?
Yeah, I do remember that name. Yeah.
Yeah. So Miguel Tudela has been around and ripping free surf edits. Luca Macinas, I've seen he's a very, very, he suits the format of competitive surfing really well, his style of surfing. Yeah. And then if the waves are small, I think those guys actually have advantages over Michel Perez, Jeremy Flores, Jordy Smith.
We got it. Look, let's just cut the BS and go, who can beat Gabe and Idla?
Yeah.
And you know who I think it is? It's kind of a dark horse, but it's that kid from Japan that won the US Open a couple of years ago.
Hiroto Ohara.
That's my pick to get the gold medal. What a story. And he's going to outshine Kanoa and be
Hiroto,
Japan's star.
I'm a big fan of Hiroto, and I've seen him surf in real life, personally in the water with him a handful of times. And the kid is sparky.
He won the US
unbelievably.
Open.
Yeah, exactly. Unbelievable. Well, Kanoa did too. Kanoa's won it twice. So they could be the duo.
I think that he's going to fly under Kanoa's radar. Kanoa's going to be all blah, 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 and I could see this kid taking it out, and I'm kind of pulling for him.
Yeah. Well, the other reason I was picking Peru is they've got Sofia Milanovic on their team. as well on the women's side. The other female, Daniela
Really?
Rosas, I don't know,
Sophia
but yeah.
Milanovic is probably a grandmother. We've got grandparents in these Olympics.
Well, I'm actually hoping for those guys. And while we can all day poo-poo or criticize the WSL's venue location choices, especially the year of COVID, by neutralizing the greatest surfers in the world, we can't do that for the Olympics, because the Olympics are they're forced to surf this venue. And this is an opportunity for some of these guys, like we're saying, to kind of upend it. These are Jordy Smith, Julian Wilson. These guys are F1 drivers. They are fine-tuned machines for the biggest, fastest, best waves on the planet. And they will absolutely trounce any of these other names that we've mentioned. But these other names we mentioned, they've been training on the go-kart track. And this race is going to take place on the go-kart track, and so I think that's what we're going to see. But shame on the WSL if they ever put the CT surfers on a go-kart track.
Yeah. What's his name? How do you say his name?
Hiroto Ohara.
Hiroto is Super Mario on the go-kart track.
Exactly.
Speaking of Julian Wilson, go ahead.
And Kanoa is Yoshi.
Who's Yoshi? Dude, I don't know Mario that well. Dude.
Then why'd you pick the analogy?
I know Super Mario. I know he's a small little.
Let's think about
guy.
Super Mario. Mario was an Italian plumber who was hooking up with a princess. He was trying to hook up with the princess was that was the whole premise of the game.
To drive to the princess?
Yeah, and there was a dinosaur who was a king who captured her and put her in a castle. And an Italian plumber was going like an Italian plumber thinks he has enough clout to be with a princess. It's insane. The whole thing's insane.
I love this.
The whole thing was an acid dream from whoever the inventor was.
This is perfect. I'm going to start playing. I had no idea there was this backstory.
I think the Italian plumber at some point should have been like, look, that guy's a dinosaur and he has a castle. I better get back to plumbing. Sort of that like princess wants nothing to do. What can I provide for her? Some sausages?
Super Mario's the Godfather.
Meatball sandwich. When I was growing up, my dad taught my Sunday school class. There was actually a main teacher whose profession it was, and then my dad would kind of help out. And the main teacher's name was Mario, so everybody called my dad Luigi. All the other kids, and I get my feelings hurt about it because I think my dad wasn't too keen on the nickname either. And so I'd be like, don't call my dad Luigi.
Wow.
How funny is that?
That is interesting.
I've got really good email about the ISA games that I think you'll love to chime in on. Oh, do we need to go to commercial?
Yeah, commercials are important.
Commercial break.
Right. Yeah. Welcome. We're back. Commercials are important, but we talk surf and we're spitting.
Yeah, guy.
Yeah, you said yeah, guy.
So listen to this listener email regarding El Salvador, because I really think, Scott, you're going to have unique insights. It says, after listening to your last show, in particular about the ISA games, I found it quite interesting when I also heard on the very same day this Bitcoin news on this other podcast. The podcast, he linked to it. It's called The Breakdown. He says, in short, it states that the president of El Salvador has put his full support behind making Bitcoin legal tender in his country. He welcomes with open arms citizens from all countries to move to El Salvador, as they pay no property tax, no capital gains tax on Bitcoin, and also makes special mention of the great surfing opportunities in the country. I've never been, but I hear the waves can be great. If this country is becoming more safe and crypto friendly, will this inspire Bitcoin holding surfers from around the world to move there, or at least spend more vacation time there? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Dave in Australia.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of both El Salvador and Bitcoin. And that's interesting. You know, I did see that the El Salvador president was all about Bitcoin. And I'm not a, economist or a financial guru. So don't take anything I have to say with anything but a raised eyebrow regarding this stuff. But, what does that say? What does that mean to their fiat currency that's already there? I don't know what it is. I think
I
it
don't
might
know
be the
either.
peso. They might have their own version of the peso, but let me see if I can pull it up. But I kind of don't know what to say other than, wow, that's interesting. And El Salvador's killer. I guess if the question is from Steve is, will
Dave.
Bitcoin loving Dave, excuse me, Dave, is it Dave?
Dave in Australia.
Dave in Australia. Oh, is this our friend Dave from Aruba?
No, I don't think so.
Um, is this going to move the needle regarding surfers going to El Salvador that hold Bitcoin that are going to like, use some of their earnings?
Or I mean, that's part of it. I think to me, it's more interesting of does this move the needle for Bitcoin? Like, what does this do to Bitcoin's price? Like a country's, you know, full-fledged support of it as a stable currency and something that they want to transition towards. What does that do to Bitcoin? Or if their own currency is in jeopardy, does it actually hurt Bitcoin's price?
Well, it would have already moved the needle, this news, and
Yeah.
Bitcoin's been down quite a bit, which is
So
normal.
are you buying?
It's a good
buying the
time to
dip?
buy. It's a good time to buy the dip. I am buying
Let me
a little bit of Bitcoin. I'm buying more of other stuff, but I mean, I bought Bitcoin pretty cheap. So even the dip, it's hard to buy the dip when it's still expensive relative to how much you paid for it earlier. But I do
That's what
think
I
that,
was going to ask you is
yeah,
it looks like a dip based on the last, let's say 2 months performance, but maybe it's
yeah.
just actually coming back down to its natural level or to where it actually reasonably should be, because it's still
Well,
astronomical.
if you follow Bitcoin from a historical perspective, this is totally normal. It kind of, it goes like this, and then it takes a big jump up and then comes back to like still a 300% gain from what it was. So this is just a normal sort of retrenching. And I think you'll see Bitcoin make another move, probably north of 100,000, and then probably stabilize at like 60 or 70. You might recall Bitcoin moved to 30 and then came back and stabilized at like 15 or 20 or whatever it was. Then it moved to 60 and it stabilized at 35, which is where it's at now. It's going to move, I think, to 100 and then stabilize at 70. It's going to move to 150 and stabilize at 100. That's kind of what it does. So this is a good time to buy.
6 months ago, I was asking you, what does retirement look like for you? And you're like hemming and hawing. Maybe El Salvador living off your Bitcoin royalties.
El Salvador is a pretty gnarly country. It's
Don't say that. I got negative last week. Somebody sent me such a long DM, like, "How dare you? El Salvador is amazing," and I think they live in El Salvador.
Well, El
But
Salvador
yeah, they
is
were not
amazing.
happy. Yeah, they were not happy with the way that I talked about their surfing,
Well,
or the waves. I guess the quality of the waves.
look, there are institutions in El Salvador which aren't the greatest, like many third world countries. At the end of the day, there's some sketchy stuff.
You're not going to be retiring there at the end of the day, ultimately.
I mean, let's put it this way. You're going to want to be able to get the hell out of there really quick. You can retire there if you have a private jet that can jet you the hell out of there.
Would you consider retiring in Lemoore, Scott?
No, but I would consider retiring in inland, off of the coast.
Surf Ranch is our next event on the CT, and there's 4 female surfers that will not be showing up. And Sally Fitzgibbons is among them, and she's a title contender right now. Tyler Wright is another one, Bronte. And then there's an unconfirmed 4th. And I'm not sure why they're unconfirmed, but Julian Wilson is also out on the men's side. A lot of this seems to be COVID related. Nobody's explicitly stated the reason but it's, COVID constrictions in Australia are so tight that for the Australian surfers kind of leaving the country and then trying to get back in, they'd be spending a lot of time away from family.
Well, no, it's getting back in. Getting back into Australia is a 14-day quarantine in a hotel. And so you got to figure right before the Olympics, do I want to fly to the US? All you need is a negative COVID test here if you're flying from Australia. But going back, and so that tells you that, okay, I've got to go from the United States and I have two options. I go straight to Japan and quarantine, or I go straight home, quarantine for 2 weeks, then go to Japan and quarantine. And I'm assuming that they're making athletes and the staff that visit the Olympics quarantine. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about it. I could probably Google it and look. I bet it's right there on the internet. Do you have to go to Japan and just show a negative test, or do you have to go to Japan and quarantine for 2 weeks? I'm not positive, but I do know that if you fly to Lemoore from Australia, surf in the event, and fly back home prior to the Olympics, which is probably what you would want to do. You want a home stay before you go to Japan. You have to spend 2 weeks in a quarantine hotel in Australia. So they're saying, let's just override that. Let's stay home. Let's gear up for Japan at home, get geeked up, bring my full A game to Japan without having to quarantine in 2 different places.
This is problematic for me for the WSL. And I'm wondering if Kelly Slater shows up. We haven't heard that injury update yet, but if Kelly's out, if John's out, if Kaloe's out, if Julian Wilson's out, and then on the women's side, you have at least 2 title contenders that are out. I mean, this really just becomes an exhibition event, you know? I mean, obviously we kind of all would have predicted that Gabriel Medina is going to win the thing anyways, but there are still a lot of other second through 5 essentially for the world title are all still important. There's a lot of points to be had here. And so, this is problematic for me.
I'm reading now that they are being exempted from their athletes that travel to Japan do not have to do a 14-day quarantine. They're being exempted, but everybody else has to.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's a weird
That is weird.
policy.
That just tells you that they're just like, what do we do? I don't know. Just, you know what? Olympics must go on. Just exempt any health requirements for those athletes.
Any thoughts on Surf Ranch? Oh, by the way, the wild cards for the men's side go to Nat Young and Michael Dunphy. Not shaking his head.
I'm just, I see that they do have an end section at Lemoore. They've added an aerial end section to the wave.
I haven't seen that.
I saw that on Felipe Toledo's Instagram. At the very end of that right, after you come out of the tube on that last end barrel section, they've added a crumble that comes at you. And
is this
Felipe
a new clip that he posted?
Yeah, I think it was two clips ago. I saw it yesterday.
But what I mean is the footage new?
I assumed that it was him practicing.
Okay, because there was footage of like Albie Layer and Josh Kerr surfing it a couple years ago, where they were just like created that experimental section on the wave, but they weren't actually implementing it.
I'm just saying that there's footage of the ski driver going, hey, this is going to be the end barrel section. Let's watch Felipe. And they watch Felipe do the whole wave, and then they go, here it comes. And he busts in air at the end as a crumble comes at him.
Interesting. Yeah, I just looked up his Instagram and it's not on there. So maybe somebody else posted the clip of him.
Oh, you know what? It might have been in a story. It was on a story. Yeah.
It's interesting. The wild card. Are you going to be watching the event?
No.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I might watch some.
Moving on.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I mean, look, I love Nat Young. I root for Nat Young.
I know.
But I would have rather given it to our friend, Mr. What's the young kid's name from Waco? Cruz?
Yeah, Cruz Denova, the
11-year-old. Just give it to him.
This is kind of a disaster. I mean, this event is kind of a disaster, or it's a circus, actually, is what it is.
Would you rather see Josh Kerr get the wild card? Would you rather watch Nat Young or Josh
not
Kerr?
really. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of those two, I suppose. Yeah. Josh Kerr. I've been watching Nat Young on Instagram recently, and he is absolutely shredding.
No,
but
absolutely.
we've gone over this a million times.
So does Ace Buchan. Would you rather see Mason Ho or Nat Young?
Yes, Mason. So moving on from that, we've only got 5 minutes. Scott's got a hard out at 8 a.m.
Yes.
Did you listen to Dana White at all on the Stab podcast? What'd you think?
Yeah. I thought it was I thought it was Dana White being Dana White, you know? I think
How
he's
did you
very
think this vote?
calculated.
Okay, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
knew that he was stirring it up, you know? He's just stirring up this show that's gonna be on ABC. He's an executive producer or whatever,
Yeah,
co-producer. What's the show called again? It's at Lemoore. It's
The
called
Ultimate Surfer.
The Ultimate Surfer. So he's in bed with Kelly. They're doing this thing together, and Dana White's doing what he does best, which is basically stir it up, man. And he stirred it up, and a lot of surfers fell for the bait.
I don't know. I read it a little more earnestly than that, and I think to me it read as, God, we've got all of these indicators of all the writing on the wall of like surfing is becoming this circus that will not service anybody's goals. Like it won't service the WSL's goal of growing the audience. It won't service our goals of wanting to see the best surfer surf in, the best waves in the world. And so why do they keep making these moves? And it's because they think that it actually will grow the audience. And when I heard Dana White say what Dana White said, I just realized, oh my God, not only has the writing been on the wall, they're really going all in this direction that will not grow the audience one iota. And it'll actually become a laughing stock to all of the core audience and also to the people who are viewing it from the outside. So it's actually going to be a bastardization of the thing. Um, and I
I
got all of that just from the way that Dana White was interpreting what our sport is and how it's going to be a broadcast to the world.
I would not be surprised if in 5 years there's pro surfing over here run by a totally different entity, and there's the Ultimate Surfer over here run by something that was formerly known as the WSL and Dana White, and those things are just they have nothing to do with each other.
I see what you're saying. I don't know that second one that either of them are even financially viable. Like,
Well, pro surfing is going to exist on some level, and it might
yeah,
be. So that's over there, and then
right.
over here is this wildly successful show
I don't think it
called The
is. That's
Ultimate
a thing.
Surfer. Oh,
That's
I
a
don't
thing. I
either.
don't think it is. There'll be different iterations of some reality shows trying
Yeah,
to kind of do it, like there's always been. But the way that they're talking about it and promote, or it's just like, well, you guys missed the plot entirely,
I think they
which
did
is
it on
kind of
purpose.
funny. I don't think they did, dude. And I think you and I have talked about it, mainly me saying the UFC is kind of the best model to follow for surfing, but they subtly and significantly missed the point. It wasn't saying, oh, we need the surfers in the ring pounding each other. Like this doesn't, it was in the way, what they missed was in the way that the UFC has never steered away from the core of their sport. The core of their sport is pugilistic and brutal. And there was a million network executives along the way telling them, hey, there should be less blood. And then we could put this on ABC. And the UFC said, F you. If without the blood, there is no thing. And so we're only going to do this thing. And through doing that thing, they grew the core audience into this massive audience. And it's become, I think he said it was like valued at $7 billion. And I remember when that thing was $400 million in debt when I was growing up trying to watch it. So that's what surfing needs to look at. And it's not, oh, we're going to put these people in a wave pool to fight it out. It's the central tenet here is man versus nature. And so that's what we're going to always lean into, man versus nature. UFC always lean into pugilism. WSL always lean into man versus nature. And every step is like, no, let's run them in beach breaks. Let's run it. Let's get more of them. Let's get lesser. Let's put them on the go-kart track. Let's put them in a wave pool, all of that. So that's where I'm thinking they're missing the plot.
Yeah, I don't think that they're. I think that they see it as two different things. There's this thing over here called WSL Entertainment. Let's try a bunch of different stuff. There's this thing over here called the Tour. I don't think they're trying to marry these two things. Even though this show over here, they say they're going to put one guy on the CT. Nobody cares. Everyone knows that guy's not going to do anything.
Well,
It's
then
folly.
if you have that diffused of a kind of goal as an organization, like how do you execute any of it? And
I don't know.
none of it is proven to be viable.
I agree. I would suggest to you, it would not surprise me if the Ultimate Surfer is way more successful fiscally than the Pro Tour.
I'd be surprised if we ever saw a second season of it.
You're watching, bro. You're watching. You're gonna have a watch party at your house.
I know you got to go. I got a listener email says, "Hey David, I'm always curious about and enjoy the music that you guys play at the end of Spit. I loved the Neil Young the other day. You and I were talking about being old men, so I put the obvious selection for the end of that one." He goes, I've been a Neil Young fan my entire life, but only recently have I found his song On the Beach.
Oh my God.
And it's a bold claim, but it's better than Old Man or all the other top songs that you've already heard. Anyways, just wondering if you've heard it. If not, you'll dig it. This is from Eric Ross. He owns South Coast Furniture in San Clemente.
Cool.
Yeah. Great
Well, we're
family run
fans.
furniture
You know what
shop
I
there.
love is there's
Do you
an
know that
album.
song?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There's a Neil Young album that came out in, I don't know, the late 80s maybe. It's called Ragged Glory. Super good. Neil Young and Crazy Horse. I love it. You can tell the bitching thing about Neil Young with Crazy Horse is that they go up to his recording studio in some barn somewhere in Seattle or wherever. They just plug the thing in, they push record, and they just start jamming. And it's so underproduced, it's awesome. And there's quite a few really great songs on Ragged Glory. So that's a CD or an album, if you will, that you should check out. It's really good.
When you're that talented, less production is more.
Yeah.
Get out of the way.
Yeah.
My Duke of the week is Coco Ho. She fell off tour, and to be honest, I think she is hitting the zenith of her surfing ability while she's off tour. She seems to be happier. She seems to be doing the things that she wants to do, and her surfing is better than it's ever been. And she actually got the wild card into Surf Ranch, and I think that she might get her best result in some time because she's just living her best life and surfing better than she ever has.
I agree with you. She's got to be free flowing and relaxed, and that's always crucial to doing well in heats, is just being relaxed. And she's got that going for her. So I would love it if she won that event. That would be cool.
And tomorrow night, I will be watching the premiere of the Electric Acid Surfboard Test Episode 1. But tonight, I'll be watching my must-see moment on the sofa, which is Lost Track Atlantic Episode 2.
No. Tonight's must-see moment is the Islanders versus the Bruins in the NHL playoffs. Come on.
Weak.
Oh.
I'll be sitting with Torin and Ishka, the three of us in quiet commune, me being jealous of the lifestyle that they lead.
Glass of wine.
Unkempt hair.
Okay, well, look, I gotta go. You gotta go. So until next week, adios and aloha.